Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about what the biggest difference is between hobby coding and coding as a job. So let's get into it. So the question in question was pretty much that. Fredrik, what's the biggest difference between hobby level programming and professional grade programming? And the short answer is that in a hobby project you can do whatever you want, and in a professional project you have to do as you, well, not as you're told necessarily, but you have to deliver results within the boundaries of the specification. Let me explain. So this is something that is a little bit tough for beginner programmers or people who are looking to become programmers to understand. And it's a very sour medicine that you have to take, but I'm just going to tell you because I feel like I need to be a counterbalance to all these idiots out there on the internet who keep on saying that you can become a JavaScript developer or a PHP developer or something in 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes, or if you really stretch it, maybe a whole day. And then of course the other ones who just say that it's going to take 6 months or 3 months or so forth. Guys, when you start working as a professional, you will very quickly, and I promise you, go out, do this if you haven't done it already. And all those times you have doubted me and said that, thought to yourself, oh, Fredrik is talking out of his ass, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Go out, get a real job, work a little while so that you see what it's about, and then come back to me, and then we can have the discussion. Because if you have not progressed to a professional grade software developer's level, you have no idea of how much of a difference it is to work on a hobby project and a professional project. Now, the main difference is that there is no limitation for what you can do, and the size of the project is minor when you do a hobby thing. When you do a hobby thing, you can do the simple thing. You can play around with some stuff. There's no limitation. You can pretty much do whatever, and if it doesn't really work out, you can change the specification or you can move code around, because you have like what, a few hundreds, maybe a few thousand lines of code at most. And it's not a problem for you to switch that around within a reasonable amount of time, because there's so little code and you can always change your mind. But in a real project, you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe in some cases millions lines of code that are all tied together in some fashion. So if you decide that, wow, I don't really know what's going on here, or I need to do this in a way that I don't really feel comfortable with because there's so much code, well, then you can't just say that, oh, we should rewrite this entire thing, or I should change the scope of the problem, because the problem is what the problem is. If your specification says that you need to do A, you can't do B. Nobody wants you to do B. You need to do A, and you need to do it the right way. And that's one of the hardest parts about being a software developer. That's why one of your most important skills is to learn how to adapt and learn how to problem solve. Because sometimes you don't have the option of saying that, oh, I can just reshape the question or reshape the specification so that I can deal with the problem in a way that is simple for me. To give you an example, in a hobby project, it might be very feasible for you to pull in some library that does something that you don't know how to do. But in the real project, you might already have another library that sort of does the thing that you want to do, but you don't know anything about it. Well, then you can't just use the thing that you want to use. You have to sit down and really study and learn, and often in a very, very quick time period, because you can't take forever, because your boss expects you to solve it in a reasonable amount of time. Well, you have to do that, and you're on the clock. And that's stress and pressure, and constantly being in a situation where you have to just learn how to make things work, and you have to understand. This is the thing that I'm trying to get you to understand, and that's why I tell you at every single chance that I get that the most important thing for you is not to learn how to write some simple algorithms and then try to get through a code interview. You need to understand that once you're inside, the real job starts. All the things that you have done until getting the job is just basic kindergarten, most likely level development, in comparison to the complexity and the things that you're going to do when you're at the actual job. It depends on the size of the project as well. And if it's a greenfield project, if it's a completely fresh project at a small company or a company that started a new thing, it might be different. But for most developers, the reality is that you have so much code that the only way for you to deal with the situation is to go through it all over time. It takes time to learn an entire system, but that's pretty much what you have to do. So what I want you to take away from this is that the biggest difference between hobby level programming and professional grade software development is that at a hobby level you have a fraction of the code that you have in a professional project, and you have no limitations practically. You can do whatever you want. And that means that you can always make things easier on yourself. You can decide to go another route, you can decide to change the implementation in some fashion whenever you feel like it to make something else that you're working on simpler. You can pull in a library and etc. etc. The sky's the limit. But in a professional project, quite a lot of these things have already been decided for you, and you just have to learn how all of these things work. And that might be a lot harder than just doing whatever you want. It usually is, but you have no choice. And the worst part about it is that you have to do it on a time budget. You can't take forever. You just have to really, you have to be able to solve the problem in a reasonable amount of time. And that is definitely a cold shower and a wake-up call for a lot of the developers who have been sold this idea that being a professional software developer is easy. It's not easy. It requires a lot of work and effort to get there. Once you have learned it, it's the best thing ever. But you have to go through the process and a slight amount of purgatory to get there. Have a great day.